we wait for success like it's an event that's going to take place. I'm a lawyer, but when do I become a successful lawyer? What's the point in which you put the word success and you assign it? So we wait for external validation of some event to come. And for most of us who are wired to love growth and expansion and builders, we never actually feel that the event takes place because we think there's more to go. I became an adult at a very young age, and I'm oftentimes the only female in a very male-dominated space. I better outwork everybody.
Yeah, I tell people all the time when they're super young and they're trying to get to like the highest level possible, I'm like, be careful what you wish for. You might not be ready for it yet. And just take your time. 20 plus years ago, I wasn't who I am today. And to understand the perspective that people have on me now versus then is just, you feel like you accomplished something. Lauren Ungeldi. Close?
Close enough.
Close enough, right? I've been practicing that, guys, because you know I like with names. Man, I got to tell you, like, what an impressive person you are. Like, I'm just completely blown away. There's not too many people that have the ability to bring tears to my eyes in conversation and, some interview stuff that we've done. You've provided like a lot of therapy to my direct family and friends in the last couple of days, which is amazing. I was talking to my wife last night about like how my therapist that I see is freaking amazing, but I feel like reliving your life, kind of like how I've been doing with you for the last 2 days. And then having you interview other people that see things in other perspectives brings so many old memories back and you haven't relived those memories in decades. And then it's just like, oh my gosh, like, and then the beautiful part about it is that, historically, 20 plus years ago, I wasn't who I am today. And to have to understand the perspective that people have on me now versus then is just, you feel like you accomplished something. So it's just been amazing. Thanks so much. And
it's really an honor for me.
Super appreciative. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
Like, your success and how has it been hard to become so successful as a female?
Yeah.
Has it been hard to be successful because of your upbringing? Maybe you weren't taught right, like me.
I come from a small Texas town,
yeah.
A little ranching kind of Aggie farmland. And grew up with a lot of hard work. That's one thing I really appreciate. We didn't own a television. I was outside all the time. My dad was like, we're going to do organic farming, which means that, you're going to pick goat weed by hand instead of using pesticides, a little child labor, never hurt anybody. And, those humble beginnings and at some points in time and you're like, oh, I need to pretend like I'm, come from somewhere fancy. And eventually you learn like, hey, it's a great asset because you got grit, you got resilience, you got super hard work ethic. And my career took kind of an interesting turn. So writing for me was something, when I was 5 years old, my parents, like before I could even write full sentences, I would get a blank notebook and I'd just put my pen like up and down, up and down, up and down. And they'd be like, what are you doing, you crazy child? And I was like, I'm writing my books. And I would patiently, until the last page was done, put squiggles in a book. And in my head, I was writing a full book, a full novel. And
were you thinking of things?
Oh yeah, whole plot lines and how it worked together, all this. And I'm telling you, this was before I could put my alphabet together correctly. So it's like it was in my blood and in my DNA. I loved it. I ended up, as kind of instead of chasing it as a profession, I really just did it as a hobby and a love. Really more pursued entrepreneurship. I ran a health coaching business and grew that over 4 years. At the height of it, I'm seeing, 8 clients a day, don't have time to pee, all the kind of stuff. And I'm working on lifestyle. There's a guy who comes to town, he's a company commander in the Iraq War. And he's doing speaking engagements and they're doing I was like involved in CrossFit at the time, and we're going to do a CrossFit event. They were bringing in the wives and mothers of 8 men who had been, lost and under his command. And they wanted to write a piece, a short article about him and his life to promote the event. And someone just was like, hey, we know Lauren's a great writer, and so let's connect these two. I get on the phone with them. 45 minutes we talk on the phone. I write the piece. It comes out. The event's great. I think that's the end of it. 2 weeks later, I get a message. Hi, Lauren. It's Jeff Morris. Shout out to Jeff. Have you ever considered writing a book? And I was like, yeah, in fact, I had, but I just, hadn't actually done it. And he's like, I've had a lot of people reach out to me, want to do my story. Dan Rather's people and all this kind of thing. He's like, but for some reason, in 45 minutes, I talked with you and you said a bunch of things that were in my head and I'd always wanted to say and I didn't know how. You didn't just dictate what I told you. Somehow you understood something that I don't know how you did, but you did. And you got nuance to my story that I'd been trying to express, but I know I didn't tell you that in words. So we embark on this journey. I'm health coaching by day, seeing all my clients by night. I mean, it's covered in, photos and trying to understand, all military, everything that goes into it. Really, the story was, just about this deep dive into mindset and, all kinds of things. And so the book comes out and becomes a bestseller, does really well. And I start steadily getting asked to write books based on referral and very interesting people I meet. Eventually, I sell my practice in, East Texas. I end up traveling the world and writing for all kinds of amazing, influential figures and characters. Now, up to date, I've written about 13 books. Some have been military, some have been, really successful entrepreneurs, spies. I did one for Bibi Aisha, who is the young Afghan girl on the cover of Time magazine, which is just an incredible, iconic story. Just very, fortunate to get to work with her. And those connections led me then to get, involved in global business. I was CEO of a global holdings company, and we did a lot of work in education, got to meet a lot of incredible world leaders and see business. I'd see business from like entrepreneurship in America, but I hadn't seen it from this very macro, thing where, countries are collaborating and there's, all kinds of ways that.
How amazing was that?
Yeah, it was incredible. I'm sitting there like, why is the Texas girl sitting next to a prime minister, And
well, you know why now.
I didn't, and here's the interesting thing. You asked about my journey, and, I used to think, I became an adult at a very young age, and some of that was, positive, some of it was traumatic. And I used to feel like, okay, I'm the youngest one in the room. I better fucking outwork everybody. And I'm oftentimes the only female in a very male-dominated space. I better outwork everybody. And what I used to see as maybe setback or something that would be a drawback, I've since now really embraced. It's actually an edge and it's actually an asset. The hard work, the take nothing for granted, the person I'll put in 10 times the preparation. And, I see everything as a learning opportunity. Every world leader I've ever sat with, I'm listening, I'm learning, I'm absorbing it all. And so that at this point, I can look back and see and understand that. But it takes an incredible, amount of, I would say, dedication to do it. People ask, what's your secret? Like, it's not sexy. It really is a lot of discipline and hard work and courage to step out there and do things. And, so.
I had a gentleman on my podcast who's very, very successful now. He grew up in Jersey. He was the only, he's actually, has like an Indian descent, but he looks black. So he was like, he had Indian descent, but he looks black. Absolute stud, amazing dude, love him to death. And I think about this all the time. His father abandoned him. He ended up, was going to go to a med school and then decided for some reason he wanted to be a police officer.
Wow.
Got hazed.
Pivot.
Was the first non-white person on the Jersey Shore policing staff.
Wow.
Massively hazed, ended up getting terminated for a thing he didn't do, proved it wrong in court, and then started this massive plate carrier company that has huge contracts. Super, super successful guy. Guy's amazing. But what really struck me was, and he's so well put together, but doesn't try that hard. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's like interesting to me. Like the people that make it look easy, like I love that, right? It's so easy. Like I try to do that and I just like crash and burn. But what the most intriguing part about his story is his mother made him every day dress appropriately, make sure he opened doors, said please and thank you, never respond to somebody, when he was young, never respond to somebody aggressively. And instilled in them that you need to speak properly. You cannot use slang. You cannot, this, that, and the other. And from that, I was like, man, how hard was that to like just sit there and like, because he stood out. Kids would be wearing sweatpants to school. He'd be in perfectly creased khakis with a nice polo shirt on. It got to the point so bad that they threw half a stick of dynamite into the house, broke a window, threw half a stick of dynamite into the guy's house while he was sitting on the sofa with his sister while his mother was at her second job of the day, and almost killed him. And
what a story.
And they ended up moving, and the hazing continued. He just couldn't get away from it. But the one thing that he did say is that like my presentation set me apart. Yeah. Right. And like my preparation and presentation for all situations set me apart. And I thought about that. I was like, 90% of the shit I do, I don't prepare for it all. I just walk into it and say, I'm going to figure it out. Right.
Well, it's kind of a mixture of it. Cause I'll be a yes. Like there's situations. It's like, hey, do you want to be on the panel? And you and 2 former prime ministers and an ambassador, you're going to sit on the same shoulder to shoulder. I was like, what? And I feel terrified at first. You know what I mean? Who am I? What is this? So I jumped into it. Hell yeah, I'm going to do it. Good. And then I train my ass off to prepare and be ready.
Something like that, yeah.
So it's like a yes, a hell yeah, and then I'll prepare. And I will figure it out. So I'm a big yes on the front end to not, and I've seen so many things in life. And one of the greatest things and I'm honored to have spent time with just incredible leaders from a lot of different backgrounds. And the biggest thing it taught me is I had this idea of these types of successful people, maybe a pro athlete or someone in Hollywood or someone who's run a country. You think they're a different caliber of person. You think I could never be that because they're just somebody different, or they had, they all went to Harvard, they all did. You get close enough and you realize the people who are the most incredible leaders, they're just the ones in the arena willing to make mistakes faster, get up and create an adaptation and do it better the second and third time. And they do it faster than everybody else. And they're persistent, consistent, and they just keep going and they don't stop. Once I realized that, I thought, oh man, then what's holding me back? If I'm just willing to get out there, okay with a little failure, making some mistakes, and I just have the relentless grit to continue, then that can get me far. And it's true, actually.
The things that I see sometimes, male or female, doesn't make a difference. It's the people that that are just too scared to take the opportunity on. Like that to me, it's like I don't know if you have any friends that like still haven't left the town you grew up in.
I mean, tons. Small town in Texas. Yeah.
It's like, dude, like have you ever seen like the ocean before? Have you ever have you ever experienced someone being in a place where you didn't understand what was going on because you can't speak the language? I've lived overseas. Just the thing to live overseas. So, there's your typical American dream, the big house and the cars and everything, just to take the opportunity and say, like, I want to see the world and take opportunities that, need me in other locations and that kind of thing. It's inconvenient sometimes, but I think that, if life's really a learning opportunity, I've learned a lot through it. It's humbling, actually, because you realize that what you thought you knew how the world worked, you realize like you're just seeing it through the bubble of your upbringing and your religion and all this. And then you understand how much complexity there is to the world. It is actually quite humbling. What was one of the biggest eye-opening experiences that you've had since you've been since you've experienced success? Like a lot of people have that. Like I can tell you what my biggest pivot was in my life, and where I went from like kind of getting it to like, oh wow, this is like what I need to be doing. But once you become successful, I think a lot of people kind of slow down on focusing on like where their growth spurts are. Yeah. And I try to stay pretty aware of like those growth spurts. And like, for instance, I felt stagnant. I went away to this crucible retreat that was like brutal. Right. And that was just like impactful. But the growth wasn't just there. It's when I came back that I was like, oh, like because I just went through an absolute sufferfest. it was so strategic, and the person that put it on is one of my strategic partners, and I actually mentor his business. And you know what he did when I was there is he put an 18-year-old kid in charge of us getting up and down a mountain with a 190-pound gurney, and we couldn't speak. He was the only one allowed to tell us what to do. So I had to take direction from this guy who was like, it was, and I'm like sitting there like, fuck, this is the wrong way to be fucking doing this bubble. You know, it was just like, but I just followed the rules, and you know, from that I came back and I realized I looked at things completely different, right? Like, so for you, like, has there been anything that's like happening maybe through a book or through a relationship or from you, like, just like as you've kind of become more and more successful, are there any things that you've done or like any tricks of the trade that you throw out there to people that are trying to level up?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, such a loaded question, so many ways to take that. I think probably one of the greatest epiphanies for me was that, you know, we wait for success like it's an event that's going to take place. I'm a lawyer, but when do I become a successful lawyer? What's the point in which you put the word success and you assign it? So we wait for external validation of some event to come. And for most of us who are wired to love growth and expansion and builders, we never actually feel that the event takes place because we think there's more to go. What I realized, and this was such a game changer for me, is that success is actually really an identity. And I believe that most of what happens in life is an extension of who you believe you are, really at your core, not what you want to happen, but if you really understand and see who you actually are. And so for me, it was doing a lot of identity work because I think for any of us early on in our career, there's some imposter syndrome. Who am I to do this? It all feels like an accident. I was like, why am I at the table with the prime minister? Why did I get invited to the keynote speech? Why did I this and that? And it all felt random. And then after a while, I began to actually be able to step into an identity. And for me, it really is about mission and purpose and something I'm here to fulfill. And it surpasses, you know, I love, you know, the expansion of money and prosperity, of course. I mean, any of us do. That's a resource to fuel my mission and purpose. But when I really started to step into the identity of I was made for this, I was created for this, and see everything as a learning opportunity, every failure to the becoming. So it's not just waiting. I'm not waiting for someone to validate me with a she's successful, because that never comes, as I understand. Like I never actually would look at myself and just say, yeah, I'm successful. But the becoming part, I can never lose. I will always create success, even in the worst failure, if I say that's going to help me to become who I'm made to be. So that, for me, that whole mindset shift of waiting from event-based external validation to a sense of really looking at what leader am I meant to become? What am I meant to accomplish on this earth, mission and purpose-based? For me specifically, that is my North Star, and that's my compass. And so that I would say is probably my biggest change.
I mean, that was beautiful. Like that was great, because I think that there's one thing that I got from it is, like, I've been in situations when I was younger where I was just like waiting for it to happen.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, you know, I can tell you 100% my personal opinion is timing is everything. It really is everything. When you're trying to get ahead of where you should be or faking something to try to make it, there is an exception to that.
Yeah.
I will say, but I believe that, like, staying like very consistent and not try to get ahead of your growth pattern is very important, but also accepting what other people see in you. You know, that's like is a huge thing. I think I told you a story about Jimmy, who you're going to meet tomorrow. He's known me for 26 years. And like, I hit this point and I was like, mortgage business crap the bed. And I'm like trying to reinvent myself. Right. And I'm like freaking out, and but I'm young. Right. And he's like, what did you think you were going to be a millionaire after your first business? I was like, I was really close, dude, you know? And
that's the other lesson. Things take time.
Yeah.
Like to write 13 books or do this thing. People say now, you know, I'll have young writers all the time come to me. I want to write something. And you have to have incredible patience to just, you know, and in this profession in particular, no one sees my work oftentimes for 1 to 2 years. not a single good job, no validation you get until, so you have to wake up at early in the morning, and you have to plug away for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. So the internal motivation, rather than, waiting for someone to, tell you good job or pressure you. So you really have to build up that inner grit and resilience. But I would also say, like, I was at some time I was like kind of overthinking moves. And I learned that if I get a good gut instinct feeling about something, I will say yeah, and I've been that girl, and I've actually done things in life too. And this is a weird hack, but like, I've jumped out of the airplane. I've gone to the foreign country. I've hiked the 10-mile thing. I've done some things physically that were way outside of the comfort zone. And I've just been like, let's try it. Let's see how it goes.
Exactly.
And so I think actually getting comfortable with the unfamiliar, because we know now, where I'm at with books, but I'm also CEO of 2 companies. Getting comfortable with uncertainty and having a level of tolerance for it is fundamental to doing business. If you want everything perfect in a business plan and the forecast, and you think it's all going to work out great and there's going to be no risk, then get out of business, So getting comfortable with risk in the physical world, and I've done it through fitness, learning some kind of new fitness that makes me feel like a beginner, but it's an intense challenge for myself. So I get beginner mindset, I'm forging new pathways here, and then I'm getting comfortable with uncertainty. And I try and have something in my life that's always doing that. First, that I'm the beginner at, so I never stop learning, and I never feel like the expert in the room. And that's surrounding myself with people who are smarter than me and know more than me, have more money than me. But I like to do that in my fitness and in hobbies. I can't draw worth shit, but I'll hire somebody to teach me how to draw. Let's see how that goes. It keeps you in a good mindset, humble, hungry, challenged. But biggest thing is just, and I think it's probably why I like travel, is because everything's uncertain.
Yeah.
And you're a nobody. You don't know how to make a joke in a foreign language. They don't care about your charisma. You're doing something that's awkward at the table because your customs and cultures are different. So it's extremely humbling. But if you can make friends with that uncertainty, and you can get in that room and do well, then you'll adapt a lot as a human.
I flew to Brazil for my jiu-jitsu coach's wedding. I was the best man in the wedding. And as I'm going to Fortaleza, the plane stopped in this jungle.
Oh, fun.
And we touched down, and it wasn't a plane change, it was just people were getting off. It was on the way to Fortaleza. Well, I don't know what's going on, and what do? I get off the plane. I think we're in Fortaleza. And as I'm walking down this dirt path, I'm going, Fortaleza is a city.
Yeah.
All I see is, and I'm in this canyon.
Seems like I should see a building about
And
now.
everybody's legitimately under 5 feet tall in this village. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like all my shit's on the plane. I have my wallet, my cell phone that like didn't work. And I went to the front gate in this village, and everyone's looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, what is this person doing here? It was actually a dangerous place. Yeah. And I was like, shit. So I legitimately went into the bathroom, and I was just like, I really just like calmed myself down completely. And I'm like, all right, what do I need to do?
Figure it out.
I need to figure it out. Right.
I've been in the same kind of scenarios.
And it's just like, and
you get resourceful then.
Yeah, you get super resourceful. So the first thing I did was I removed the water cash I had in my pocket, put it in the base of my shoe, and took like $20 and put it in each pocket.
Smart.
Right? Because I knew how far.
Throw the pickpockets off.
Yeah, no, I knew how far $20 was going to go in this area because it was far. So I went to the counter, and I legitimately was like, does anybody speak English? And they're like, no.
Google Translator. And
yeah, this was freaking, I don't know, 13 years ago. And I was like, God, this is crazy. Well, it turned out that they found somebody like in the village that spoke like really good English. And the guy came, and he spent, I had 4.5 hours before the next plane was going to come in and get me to Fortaleza or more. And he's like, you can't stay here. He's like, you have to come, like, I'll take you to my house. And I was like, holy shit. So immediately I'm like, all right, great. I give the person that found him $20, give this guy $20. He freaks out, takes me to his house. Yeah. And it's this little courtyard house that was a shack with like 5 kids running around, an outside shower. And like his family fed me, we hung out, we chilled, and the whole 9 yards. And he like kept me in a very controlled environment there. I can tell you that if that was anytime, if I was younger in that situation, I would have freaked, I would have been like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. But what I did from that situation is I built a lot of self-confidence and development.
Yeah.
And
Traveling to places will do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I can get resourceful.
Yeah, and I mean, all my stuff is like in Fortaleza now, and I'm like in this jungle town, and when I got on that plane, I felt this like overwhelming feeling of like, wow, you just did really good there, and where I'm going with this story is that like you can be stuck in a business transaction, you can open a business to where you feel like you're stuck. And I feel like a lot of people just don't slow down and like think. Like we were talking about that the other day. Like I have this ability to like make quick decisions now, and they're like really good, or I can pivot. I think that the experience factor is just so important in growth of like being able to like
A variety of experiences too.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to you get a little bit of success in some way. It can actually be easy to create a bubble in which it reinforces your feeling that you're successful and an expert and an authority and powerful. And some of that's good and okay, but I try and challenge myself to always be in a position where don't feel some of those things, where I do have to learn, or someone is better than me, or I don't know what the hell is going on. And I've done that through traveling. I've done it through putting myself in scenarios where I have people who are, 10 times where I'm at. And so is it intimidating? Yeah. Is it humbling? Yes. But I think if you insulate your world, and if you get a little success and then use that to create a world that reinforces your ego, you're probably never going to get past that level of success. And every time I up level a little bit, I'm beginner again, and I'm a beginner again. But my hope is that I'm 85, 90, and I find some way to be a beginner at something. Because when you're
start knitting.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I don't like that so much.
No, me neither. I tried it actually.
Someone once said curiosity is the antidote to fear. And in any situation where I've been really afraid and I've just gotten curious, what could I do? How could this make me a better person?
Oh, that's super interesting.
And anytime I get curious, the fear begins to diminish because I can create, I approach it, and in business, when I'm like, oh my God, what the hell's going to happen? I go, how can I get curious? How can I ask a better question of me or my team and say, guys, let's destigmatize the situation. Let's see how we could make it an adventure. And that's something I used to say with traveling is things would go totally wrong. Everything is like, to hell, my phone is dead and I need to hitchhike and everything's going wrong. And I always tell myself, like, could it be a great story? Could this be a good adventure? Could this teach me something? And then it stops classifying things as positive, negative, success, failure, and into learning experience, which again goes back to that idea that success is more about becoming than it is about an event going the way you want it to go,
Do you feel like the more you become successful, like for me in the beginning, I just like went through the stage of like, I need to pay my bills. And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, I can pay my bills now. Now I want to make like $1 million. Now I want to make 10 million.
Yeah.
Now like the stages that I'm in is like, I don't even like really think about money really anymore. And like, that's where like, you have to at some point, like there's a point to where like a situation depends on you having financial security, you have kids, whatever it is. I say this all the time, and it's nothing that I would ever wish, but I think about like the guy out there that never has kids and like how like easy that is.
I can't imagine. Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, think about like if you didn't sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's a willing sacrifice because I love my kids. I love kids in general. I think they're just amazing. I learned so much from my kids.
It's a motivator for financial gain, I would say.
For sure.
For me, I will do the extra mile to create a great, and I didn't grow up with much. I mean, we were in a single wide mobile home with, a bunch of siblings. I shared with five. We didn't have a lot, and, so and actually I was happy. I can't say that was traumatizing for me. You know what I mean? Like I didn't get it. We were just, I remember taking my clothes to the resale shop, consignment shop, and we checked in, we'd made $16. And my mom took us to Outback Steakhouse. And for that $16, we could share one cheese fries, a side of ranch, and get it filled up with the fried food and a spotted dog sundae. And we called it a night. And so taught me gratitude for everything. But of course, to say I want the next generation for my kids to give them something different has been an insane motivator for me. It's fire in my belly to provide well for them. And so, that part does help, I would say.
What when you're I want to go back to the book thing super quick, because I just came to thought. Were you self-taught to write?
Yeah.
So you did take any
all my
class?
training and schooling is in nutrition, not in
So you
creative
never-
writing or journalism. Or
Nothing like that.
Nothing.
Does it come easy for you?
It comes quite naturally, but I would say it's just a skill set that has been just honed in through a lot of discipline and patience and learning and allowing it to be edited and then taking that critique and asking the editor, why did you change that? What was the questions? A lot of writers get, sensitive. I don't like my work being edited. You got to love critique, and you've got to want to know every reason why and how to make it better to create a better version of it. And so it's an incredible learning process. There was a time in my career, actually, I thought I wanted to go back to school to get a master's. And this was after I'd written 5 books and I've been really successful, and that imposter syndrome came up, and I was like, what if someone asks me and I don't have a master's in journalism? I wanted that like piece of paper. So I called the recruiter office. I'm on the phone with a guy, and he's like, well, what are your reasons for, and he's thinking I'm probably 21, I guess, because I'm on the phone, and I've already built this whole career and all this stuff. Why do you want to get this thing? And I said, well, I've written 5 books. I explained my whole career, and I just feel that I need the creative writing. And there's this like long silence, and he goes, I don't mean to step in, but like all of our graduates who get masters, none of them have been able to do anything of what you've done. I guess you don't need the piece of paper. And this is a recruiter. And it was kind of a wake up call for me to realize, again, I was looking for external validation.
How amazing is that? That's great.
That was great, actually.
Yeah.
It was a wake up call for me, because I was like, I was about to invest all the time that, the same time that it would take me to write the next 3 books in my career. I was going to apply to that, plus get, spend $50K, $70K to do it. And it was a wake up call for me. I was like, oh, but we have these measures. I should have gone to Harvard. I should have had the degree, or I needed to have come from this kind of town, or I needed to be a man. I thought that for a while. I should be a man in this world, in this type of world. It's a drawback that I'm a woman. And all these things I realized, many of it actually worked to my advantage. Mm-hmm. And it certainly made me feel like I want to outwork, outprepare, be just relentlessly consistent. And so feeling a little underdog for a while helps you. And then I think at a certain point you realize, like, wait, I'm not the underdog at all. This is my asset.
I mean, my story. People are like, my credit card company knows it says Core Medical. So like, Dr. Gordon, when they call me, and I'm like, no, dude, not a doctor, bro. And then I'll meet people and I'm like, I have practices in 4 or 5 states. Oh, what kind of doctor are you? I'm I'm not a doctor, and I have to explain it wait, you can be a non-physician and own a practice somewhere? And I'm like, I stay out of the whole medical side of things, even though I know it real well just from being in it now. But that piece of paper sometimes just doesn't mean anything. And I love my whole team of physicians, NPs and PAs. It's just something I just don't, I'm not passionate enough about being in that position to take the time and do it. Yeah. Number one. Number 2, my brain doesn't really work in the books that well. Sure. For me, I'm more of an operator. Man, it would have been hard for me to, when I think back about, the first 10 years I grew this business, if I wanted to be a doctor, I would have been way behind that. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think that piece of paper sometimes, especially when you're already so far ahead of everything, the way that you were, is just kind of it's great that you had that recruiter, because can you imagine if you did
I know, I would have spent all that time and money.
Probably send him a check.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Yeah, if you're out there, I'll track you down.
Yeah, exactly.
Share a little proceeds. But same in business, I would say. There's a theoretical and conceptual academic study of business, and there is so much amazing stuff that goes into that.
Yeah.
But there is nothing like getting your feet dirty and getting out there and trying some things. Real world experience is everything. And it's if you got something on the line, then especially if you have a motivator, I need to provide well for my family, plus I need this to work, the pressure of it will oftentimes create something amazing. And all the best stuff I've learned, and I read a ton. I do nowadays with the world of information, how readily available it is, I would venture to say, especially in certain professions, like don't go to like YouTube medical school. I don't do that. Don't be self-taught. We want our surgeons to go to school and our lawyers too. But, you know, in business and different things, if you're just extremely curious, you can learn mostly what you need. And I found that being in a situation that necessitated going and learning something to fix it oftentimes made me retain the lesson 10 times better than theoretical, hypothetical learning. If this happens, then do this. When you need a solution, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I can really relate to that. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, yeah, if you think about, you know, you're basically problem solving for yourself and finding every resource possible. Like, I'm a big fan of, like, you know, I explained to you the other day about humility, like how it's just so important to me. Like, when I'm stuck, I just go to someone I know that has a solution. I'm like, dude, listen, man, I know you have this solution. Can I buy a cup of coffee? Can we talk about it? And that does so much for both people, you know, when you can sit there and someone's already overcome something that you're dealing with. And that can be in business, that can be in any angle. And I do think, you know, people are like, I'm going to YouTube it. I'm like, well, I'm not going to YouTube it. I'm going to go over here and talk to this guy because now I can have a conversation about it. And I think that, I think there's definitely a time and place for YouTube. I can tell you right now where I've been like,
we're not hating on you YouTube stars.
Where I've been backcountry and like something broke and I'm like, how do I fix this thing? You know, but
that's a testament to your circle that, again, when you didn't just create this insulated version where you're the highest expert, the authority on everything, the best person in the room, the only person everyone comes to advise to burst your ego. You have other people that know more about a certain subject than you do. And then those are the people you call when you need that. I think that's the best way, is to actually, the fact that you have someone to call on the phone.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people, and you were the one that, you know, really, this couple conversations we had talked about how isolating some people create their success in isolation. And then they don't have someone on the other end of the phone. And that's, I think, one of the things I respect a lot about your style. And I've seen it firsthand because I got to witness the group of people around you, that you didn't create an isolation for yourself.
Well, I mean, when you're the owner of a company and you have success, there's immediately stuff you just can't discuss with everybody, right? So you are lonely. Yes. Right? Yeah. So anything that you can discuss and you can open up for conversation and you can involve people in decisions, you better do that, or you're going to be like sitting on the top of a mountain by yourself being like, you know, because there's things I want to celebrate, but I can't celebrate it with really anybody, you know, because then they look at you like you're either bragging or they want to come for you.
You touched on something. I talked to a couple of close friends about this recently, because we always say, like, a good friend's the one that sees you through a failure and in your worst time. And I think there's some truth to that. I would venture to say, in my own experience, a friend that you could be seen in your success is much harder. And it's been very 100%. Varied. And by the way, I'll very much admit, I don't think, I still have a long way to go to attain some of the success like you have had. But I've already seen in my own life that it can be isolating. Someone says, you know, and we have this now with women, female empowerment, you go girl kind of thing. But when it gets down to it and you really win and you create prosperity, power, authority, it's not, you can be your same old you, wanting to just be seen and loved for who you are. And the people around you, it's whether it's jealousy or positioning, strategy. And I truly believe that truest friends are the ones you win next to and that love you for who you are in the midst of success. Yeah, I tell people all the time when they're super young and they're trying to get to like the highest level possible, I'm like, be careful what you wish for. You might not be ready for it yet. And just take your time. Like, I had the conversation with Jordan 5 years ago. I was like, he's like rushing to try to make money in every direction. I'm like, dude, you're so young, man. And I'm telling you right now, I don't know if you're ready to deal with it, because the thing is that, like, when you hit that success button and you're like there, then the evil comes out of the closet. Then you start seeing that evil all around. Like, I've had, which you're aware of these, you know, I've had some, you know, internal sabotage. I've had betrayal. I've had all this stuff. And then also the people that, like, will just, like, talk shit and be like, oh, he thinks he's great now because he's got money, you know? Yeah. And like, that's
that's kind of screwed up because like, in that department, I try to go about life with no one knowing that part of existence about me.
Yeah.
Like I just want it to be like, I don't really like to, I can't stand the person that's boasting about how much they're making, or they make it very well known to their children about how wealthy their family is. Like I tell my daughter still, we can't afford stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Like, and she's like, what do you mean we can't afford it? I'm like, no, we just can't afford it right now, and I think that, it's hard to manage that, like that filter of people in your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I would say that's definitely true. And as a leader, it's hard because actually you're still facing decisions. You don't know what to do. You're still facing failures. You're still facing insecurities. Like all that stuff doesn't go away. But, when you are in a position where of leadership, it's not. And I think sometimes too with social media, there's an idea that, people see a few snapshots of life and then they assume, oh, you think you're perfect or this and that. Like there's a behind the scenes. There's a lot of hard work that's going in, but it actually, you can't share every single thing public. There is a necessity for discernment and privacy. And that's not the same as trying to act like you have it all together. It's not what you're doing. It's just more that behind the scenes, what goes into a decision that you announce to your team, that has to be done fairly privately.
Exactly right.
And that privacy can sometimes be seen as, oh, you're trying to make it all, like you have it all together and you know everything. And it's like, no, you have no idea. Like, what, I was up all night and I'm just looking like, man, I hope this is right,
I've never even thought about that before, but you're so right. Like I have had like sleepless nights over decisions I've had to make. And then you get questioned and you're just like, dude.
But just because I didn't bring you into the process.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes, especially in our culture nowadays, where we want all this transparency and I should show everything on social media and I should cry and tell you about my marriage problems, post my this and my that. And I don't, some people, that full transparency to the world works really well. There's no shame in that. But for me, there is a sense of discernment in what goes out and a sense of safety and some privacy. But it doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Yeah, that's right.
It doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Just because there's privacy and discernment as a leader doesn't mean that there's a facade you created, And I think those two there's a misconception there that it's like, I need to see your whole journey. You need to transparently tell me everything. And I think today's world, privacy doesn't innately mean you're hiding. It just means that you're being discerning about those that you're leading and what rooms you're in. And I think that's a positive thing, actually.
Well, I mean, that is, it's very positive and super important when you're there to be doing things like that too, So before we wrap up right now, what is the next 2 years of your life goals look like?
Great question, actually. I've been fortunate to really, my two loves in my professional life are books and business, and they're very purpose-driven. I've written 13 books. I've got a couple more coming up here in the next few years. And business, I told you about my early career, kind of that entrepreneurship and the health space, and then seeing it from the completely other side of, large-scale holdings company investments and geopolitics and all this. And now it's all converging. It's very interesting. Some of the books I've written, and everything. So right now for me, there are a couple book projects on the horizon, but more importantly, I'm really grateful to be leading two companies, CEO of two companies. RSN, you met my business partner, Rachel. She's been a one-woman show for 7 years, built an incredible functional medicine empire that's just amazing. She brought me on as co-CEO this year. And then together we are launching a new venture called New Bio. And you also know Tyler Gray, which he's a great friend of yours. And there's some I think it's very purposeful to me, providing a new full spectrum care for mind, body, and nervous system, and addressing care that needs to happen for our warriors, and then just for a lot of people in America today who are understanding that they need to treat the full body. And so I'm very excited about that. It's a mission and purpose for me. And so Right now, we got a launch coming up here in about a month, and then we've got some big expansion opportunities we're doing, with our existing company. So a lot in business, but I can never stop writing. It doesn't matter how busy I am as CEO. I got to write at least a couple books a year. So I got a couple of interesting ones coming up in the works.
And we will be doing another podcast all around New Bio. So
exactly, yeah. So more on that to come. Yeah.
I need to thank you so much. You're awesome. Everyone who's spoken to you loves talking to you and doesn't want it to end. So
that's good to hear.
Yeah, it's good to hear. So guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and thank you so much.
Thank you.